What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's some of my final thoughts ahead of the Gameweek 34 deadline. So I'm going to go through the latest press conference information, answer some of your questions, go for a Wildcard 34 draft, a free hit 34 ranking guide, and then a massive ramble about my team as well. So let's get into it. So let's start with Liverpool and some quotes on Conor Bradley, also related to Trent Alexander-Arnold, because a lot of you would have bought Bradley recently. And for those of you on free hit, you're probably considering Trent Alexander-Arnold as well. So the quotes are quite long, but I think it's worth going through. So there was a question that came in on whether Conor Bradley is fit enough to play 90 minutes. This is what Slot said. That depends on the upcoming 2 sessions, but he was getting closer and closer to 90 minutes. The first and second one were approximately the same amount of minutes. So he's talking about matches there, the 2 matches. And it's normal if you play twice around 70 minutes, then the chance of you being able to play 90 is getting closer and closer. But we're also taking very good care of him because he had 2 injuries that were similar. So yeah, let's wait and see how he does today and tomorrow. So that's in the 2 training sessions they've got before they play Spurs. If he's able to play, and if he's able to play, if he can make 90. Then there was a follow-up question about whether the rest of the season will allow Conor Bradley to develop, basically because of the wingers that he'll be up against, like Tell for Spurs, Matoma for Brighton, etc. Slot said this: it's going to be very important for him to become an even better player than he is now to play many games in a row. Unfortunately for him, there's another fullback who's world class at this club as well, with Trent Alexander-Arnold. That is probably the only reason why he hasn't played back-to-back games yet, but he definitely has the quality to do so. And I think that's the next step for him in his development, is to play every single weekend and feeling that pressure. And at a certain moment, that doesn't feel like pressure anymore. That might be his next step, but as long as Trent is here, it's going to be a difficult step for him to make as well. But they are both very good fullbacks. So one, that kind of tells me Trent is off in the summer, but that's probably the worst kept secret in football at the moment. But it also backs up what I've been saying this week. I think if Trent is fit, he will start. Now, there wasn't any questions about Trent's fitness. All we know is that he came off the bench against Leicester, scored the goal, and got about 20 minutes. So whether or not he's fit to face Spurs, I don't know. But those quotes make me think that while Trent is at the club, he will continue to be first choice, because as good as Bradley is, he is not Trent Alexander-Arnold. There's a reason that Conor Bradley has not played a huge amount of minutes when Trent has been fit, because Trent is the better player. And I really don't think there's any debate about that. So going by what Slot has said, I think Trent will start against Spurs, but there is some risk there. Honestly, you could read those quotes and just think, I'm going to avoid both of them, because there's no guarantee that either start. So if you want to take the risk, I would definitely go with Trent. If you're someone not on free hit that has Conor Bradley, I would probably just risk it and play him unless you've got a decent option on the bench. But I suspect a lot of people haven't got massive benches this week because of the blanks. But if I had to guess, I think Trent will start. Whether it's worth risking him is completely up to you, your team, your goals and stuff like that. But I think he will be in that 11. So for Fulham, Marco Silva was asked about Harry Wilson, who primarily plays right wing, which is where Ryan Sessegnon has been playing recently as an out-of-position defender. He said, we could use him from the start or bench, talking about Wilson. Sessegnon is playing well. I need to decide, but Harry will be involved. So we know Wilson's going to get some minutes. It's just about whether or not it will be from the bench or in the starting 11. If I had to guess right now and make a prediction, I think Sessegnon will start right wing. It's just about how many minutes he gets. For the most part, he has always gotten past 60 minutes. There was a substitution against Bournemouth where he came off before the 60th minute, but that was an error. They didn't mean to sub him. The wrong number went off, and because Sessegnon was already off the pitch and the sub had come on, they couldn't reverse it. So most of the time he does get past 60, but Harry Wilson hasn't always been fit. So there is some risk there. I think Sessegnon will start, but I might be wrong about that. And even if he does start, would he make it to 60 minutes? Lots of people will say he's a defender playing right wing. He's worth the risk. If you think that's the case, then absolutely you should put him into your team. Everyone will have different risk preferences, and there's a question about that later on. You need to decide for your own team, your own goals, your own rank, aims or mini league aims and stuff like that, what you want to do. I think Sessegnon will start. I can't guarantee it. I think he'll probably get past 60 minutes. I also can't guarantee that either. From what Marco Silva has said, Harry Wilson is going to play some part in that game against Southampton. On Muniz, he said Muniz is going to be out for the next game. let's see after that. It's going to be hard to have him back. So Raul Jimenez will definitely start against Southampton. Just because Muniz is out, by the way, it doesn't mean that Raul Jimenez will play 90 minutes because that doesn't happen that often. Even in the last game against Chelsea, where Muniz wasn't available, Raul Jimenez still came off in the 83rd minute. So I don't think he'll go and play 90, but I think it's an absolute certainty that he will start. Let me get the right screen up. Absolute certainty that he will start. It's just about how many minutes he will play. And obviously he's against Southampton. He's on penalties. So he's a huge option on free hit right now. If you're not on free hit, I would definitely avoid Sessegnon. It's too much of a risk going forward. And I think with Jimenez, because we don't know exactly how long Muniz will be out for, I'd probably avoid him as well. But on free hit, they're both options. If you want to play it safe in defence, just go Leno or Robinson instead. So although we're getting towards the end of the season, there's still time to join the Let's Talk FPL League over on Sleeper and get your predictions in for Game Week 34. Whoever gets the most predictions correct this week will win a £50 Amazon voucher. So as always, all you have to do is predict whether it's going to be a home win, an away win, or a draw for each match in Game Week 34. And I'm going to make my predictions right now. So I've backed Palmer a lot this week, so I'm going to go for a Chelsea home win against Everton. Graham Potter will be hoping to get one over on Brighton, but I don't see it happening. So Brighton to win at home as well. The three teams that are going to get relegated, I think are all going to lose. So Newcastle, Fulham and Wolves wins fairly straightforward, I would say. I really want to back Man United, and I don't think there will be as much rotation as people are expecting. The players that missed out last time, I think, will be back in. But Man United do have one eye on Europe. It's all that matters at this point. So I'm going to go for a Bournemouth win. And Liverpool to beat Spurs as well. They're going to clinch the title this weekend. They only need a draw or a win. I suspect it's going to be a win. Spurs, again, probably won't rotate a huge amount, but they will have one eye on Europe. Forest Brentford is difficult to call. Like, Forest defence has been so good, but Vista and Burma are always tricky to keep quiet. I'm going to go for a Forest win. I think they will make Champions League. This is not an easy match, but I think they will get the win. There are a couple of matches that have already been played for this week, specifically in Sleeper. So the City Villa game and Arsenal Palace. Unfortunately, I forgot to get my predictions in. So some people might already be slightly ahead this week, but there's still a chance to catch up. So whoever gets the most predictions correct will win that voucher. If more than one of you have the same number of top predictions, I'll do a random draw to determine the winner on the next deadline stream. Completely free to play. Click that link in the description below or scan the QR code on screen and join my league and get your predictions in. So for Newcastle, Eddie Howe was back, which is good news. He spoke about Botman and Cher. On Botman, he said, Sven has trained well this week. Great to see him back with the group and on the grass. A really big step for him. I don't think he's going to be an option for FPL for the rest of this season. On Cher, he said, Fabian, we hope will be okay. So he came off in the last game. I think it was with a hamstring problem. My guess, again, would be that he will start. I think it will be the same back for Trippier, Cher, Burn and Livramento. But even though I think he will start, I don't think there's any need to risk it. Like, if you really want to go differential on a free hit because of ownership, just pick Trippier, who's on set pieces, if you want to back against Livramento and Burn. But generally, Livramento and Burn are still really good picks. You could argue that Livramento at this point is more attacking than Trippier. If you want to pick him up for Ipswich at home, great. And if you're not on free hit and you've got a Cher, Trippier, Livramento or Burn, I would just play them. The fixture is really good and there's no guarantee that Fabian Cher will miss out. I think he will start. In terms of Murphy, Gordon and Barnes, obviously they're all pretty popular this week, especially Barnes and Murphy, who have done well in recent weeks. There was no real indication from Eddie Howe, I should say, about who will start. He basically said there's no fatigue going into this match. He'll pick the best team, to win the game, essentially. Now, if I was banking on who will be the most guaranteed starter from Barnes, Gordon and Murphy, I think it has to be Murphy. He started every single game since like game week 12, 13. He's the more natural right winger. And obviously we've seen him do really well. He does often get subbed early, but in terms of a start, I think he'll be there. So in terms of minutes, he's probably the most safest pick because he's the most likely to start. But I think whoever starts left wing could get more minutes overall. So if Barnes and Murphy start, I think Murphy is more likely to get subbed for Gordon, and then Barnes is more likely to go and get 90 minutes. So it's a really difficult call. I've spoken all week about the fact that I'm going to back against Murphy because he's so highly owned. Who's going to start out of Barnes and Gordon? I really don't know. Like, honestly, choose your narrative. One narrative is Harvey Barnes, no chance he gets taken out of that team. He's done so well. The other narrative is, well, they just lost 4-1 to Villa. Does Eddie Howe mix it up? And if he does he go back to his first choice left winger for most of the season, which is Anthony Gordon? Potentially. If you want to take a punt on free hit, I think Anthony Gordon's one of the biggest punts you can go for. because he's playing Ipswich at home, which is a great fixture, and his ownership's going to be super low because he hasn't been playing. He's had 2 games off the bench now. Is that enough to start? The honest answer is I don't know, and I don't know if I will take that risk. Like I said, the most guaranteed starter is probably Murphy, but Barnes or Gordon to me is more interesting if they start. So if you've got confidence in either of them, go for them. Or you could just pick Isak and go for 2 defenders if you're on free hit. Generally, if you're not on free hit, I would say keep whichever Newcastle players you've got, but I wouldn't be looking to add more because it's Brighton away, Chelsea at home and Arsenal away after the Ipswich game. So on Wolves, the manager spoke about Jose Sarr. He said he's okay and working with the team, so presumably he'll be back in the starting 11. That's not 100% confirmed, but that would be my guess. So if you're not on free hit and you've got Sarr, I wouldn't panic about bringing another goalkeeper in. If you are on free hit and you want him, just make sure you've got another playing goalkeeper on the bench. Pretty simple. If you really want to back the Wolves goalkeeper, just go Jose Sarr and Bentley, because if Sarr doesn't play, Bentley will instead. It just means you can't have 2 other Wolves players. So if you've got Sarr, Aitner and Cunha, just pick like Sanchez or Leno or Pope, whoever you've got a spot for the bench. On Bellegarde and Hwang, he said they both trained yesterday, and I believe they can help the team. Now, Bellegarde's interesting because Cunha, when he came back from suspension, didn't get straight into the starting 11. The manager played the same team again because they've been playing so well. Cunha got back in because Bellegarde got injured. So if Bellegarde's back, does that mean Cunha's minutes take a hit? I don't think so for Leicester. And also, we don't know how fit Bellegarde is. It might just be that he's on the bench and can only play 10, 15, 20 minutes or something like that. And even if he comes off the bench, it won't necessarily be for Cunha anyway. There's been a lot of speculation this week about Cunha's minutes for the rest of the season, because ultimately he's probably not going to be there next year. Wolves are safe, so the manager is already thinking about next season, and those plans probably won't include Cunha. For what it's worth, I think he'll start this week. I think he's a really good option on free hit, probably one of the best forwards you can get. The thing I really like about him is, as soon as he gets an attack and return, it almost comes accompanied with 3 bonus points. So that his first assist isn't worth 3 points, it's probably worth 5 or 6. His first goal isn't worth 4 points, it's probably worth 6 or 7. Because his bonus is just so good once he gets an attack and return. So I think you're fine. I guess the only slight thing I would say is his minutes right now are probably not as secure as they've been for most of the rest of the season. Like if 3 months ago you tried to say Cunha won't be in the 11, you get laughed at. If you said that to Wolves fans right now, I think a lot of them would say, probably not going to happen, but it could. That's the slight difference. So I think he will start. I wouldn't have any issues picking him. If you want to back against his ownership, that's a different story. But I think he'll start against Leicester and he'll probably get 80 to 90 minutes fairly easily. So let's quickly talk through a Wildcard 34 draft. Despite the fact there are not many people wildcarding this week, I've had so many comments and tweets about going through a wildcard video. I'm not going to do a whole separate video. There's not enough people playing the chip this week, but we'll talk about it now. It's also worth saying I came up with this draft on Wednesday, and my main focus for my own team this week has been free hit. So I've not put as much thought into this as I would do if I was on wildcard myself. I'm just going to be open and honest about that. But I actually think because there's blanks for certain teams, and so you can only have so many players from those teams, it kind of almost picks itself for the most part. There are definitely some players you could change in this, and I'll talk through them as I go. I think in terms of blank players this week, Man City would be where my focus is. So I've got Marmoush and Vardio on the bench, probably the 2 most nailed players in that team. You could put Kevin De Bruyne on the bench if you wanted to, and he did play back-to-back games in the double, so I think his minutes probably do look quite good going forward. But I've chosen Cole Palmer instead for Everton at home this week, and I actually think that Palmer is probably just a better option than De Bruyne for the rest of the season anyway. So Marmoush and Vardio definitely in. The most likely teams to double in Game Week 36 are probably Man City and Villa, but that is not a guarantee. But by having Marmoush and Vardio in there, you've kind of given yourself a couple of double game week players if it happens, and they've got good fixtures outside of the double anyway for the rest of the season. So I would have them on the bench. Goalkeepers, I've gone for Kepa and Pickford. If Man City end up doubling in 36, so will Bournemouth. So you've got your Bournemouth goalkeeper there. He and Pickford actually rotate really nicely. So if there are doubles in 36, those teams will blank in 37. So Kepa would blank in 37, but Pickford would have Southampton at home. So they rotate pretty well. I've also got O'Brien on the bench from Everton as well. I'm not sure if everyone will want a double up on Everton, but they do play. Let me just double check here. I think it's, Ipswich at home 35, Southampton at home 37. There's a nice little bit of rotation there. Other defenders, Aït-Nouri, Nico Williams and Livramento. I think after this week, the only time you'd want to play Livramento is probably game week 38, but he's such a good option this week, I wouldn't necessarily want to drop him. But overall, those three players I've just mentioned are all nice and cheap. Aït-Nouri, Leicester at home this week. Decent option for the rest of the season. Nico Williams, Brentford at home this week. Not great that he's up against Mbeumo, but he also has Leicester at home in 36. And if Forest beat Man City in the FA Cup, there is a chance, a small one, that they could double in 36 as well. If they don't, you've still got that Leicester at home fixture. Midfield, I've already spoke about Palmer. I get it. You all hate him. Choose someone else if you want to. I would include him. He's a nice cash cow if you want to move to anyone else down the line as well. Salah would have to be in as well. Liverpool probably going to win the league this week, right, against Spurs. So there might be some rotation, but there's not really anywhere else to spend your money. So I'd probably just have him in from the start and see what his minutes are like over the next few games. I suspect he'll continue to start most games for Liverpool because they've got nothing else to rest him for. Mbeumo is such an obvious pick. Just don't overthink it. Put him in your team. And then the other two midfielders, I've gone for Kluivert and Gibbs-White. My team value is quite low. If you could afford someone like Bowen instead of Gibbs-White, I would definitely do that. So if you've got the money, pick him instead. And Kluivert, again, is a bit like Kepa. Potential double. If no double, the fixtures are still pretty good for the most part. He's on penalties. Minutes look good. Bournemouth don't really have anything else to rotate for. So I think he'll continue to start. Up front, Marmoush on the bench. Isak's pretty obvious. I actually think after this week, Newcastle's fixtures aren't great. But there's not a huge amount of other great standout forwards. So I think I would just start with Isak. You don't really want to go into this week without him. He's probably the second best pick after Salah. And then I've gone for Visser over Cunha. Again, for this draft, I got no more money in the bank at my team value. If you've got more, Bowen instead of Gibbs-White and Cunha instead of Visser are definitely options. But I actually think once you get past this week, Visser for 35 to 38 is probably better than Cunha. And there are still some people putting doubts in my mind about how many minutes Cunha will get for the rest of the season. Wolves are safe. He's probably off in the summer. Brentford have got a shot at Europe. It's a small chance, but it could happen. The fixtures are good. Visser's goal threat has been great this year. He's cheaper than Cunha. I really like him. So if you're looking at that thinking, well, I wouldn't go for that player, I'm going to go for this one instead, you've probably thought about Wildcard 34 a lot more than me, and that is absolutely fine. But I think players like Mbeumo, Salah, Palmer for me, Bowen if you can afford it, Visser, Isak, someone like Nico Williams, cheap option, a Everton defensive player one way or another, even if you don't double up, are all fairly obvious picks. And I think the Kepa and Pickford rotation works quite nicely. So there's going to be a ton of questions about free hit this week. Is this player or that player the better option? So what I thought I would do is do a kind of ranking system for each position, specifically for game week 34. Now, I will say my head is a little bit all over the place with free hit. And if I did this same thing tomorrow, the orders might be slightly different. And some of it comes down to how much you want to back against ownership, whether a player is going to start and stuff like that. So let me just talk through it. For goalkeepers, the top option is probably Nick Pope, but a lot of you probably want to go Isak and at least one other attacker, maybe even two, and possibly a defender. So if you're not going for Pope, I quite like Leno. I wish the game was at home for Fulham, but Southampton away is still a decent fixture. I think based on the fact that Jose Sarr is back training with the team, he probably should be up there as well, maybe even ahead of Leno. But I guess I've got slight doubts about him compared to Leno and Pope. So they're the top two keepers. If you want to go for like Sanchez from Chelsea or something like that, absolutely fine. But I think most people would just choose Pope or Leno, possibly Jose Sarr. For defenders, I think just because of the fixture, Newcastle defenders have to be at the top. So I've gone Trippier, Livramento and Burn. As I said earlier, Livramento is arguably just more attacking than Trippier now, especially from open play. But I think for 1 week only, I'd take the punt on the set-piece taker, and that is Trippier. His ownership is lower. That's the only reason I got him at the top of the list. Then I've got Aït-Nouri in 4th place, just because I think Leicester at home is a better fixture than Southampton away. Then Robinson, because you know he's going to start. Then Sessegnon, if you want to take a risk on the minutes. Then Trent, again, if you want to take a risk on the minutes. Then Cucurella from Chelsea, and then Van Dijk for Liverpool. You could argue that if I've got Trent above Cucurella, then Van Dijk should be as well, but I just see Trent as the more attacking defender, and from Chelsea, Cucurella is the most attacking defender there now. It ain't Reece James. Like, Reece James is just way too much of a risk. He doesn't even necessarily get forward. Sometimes he plays in midfield. He might only play 45 minutes. You just can't go there. Like, players like Kirkes are absolutely fine against Man United, but I don't think they get above most of the players on this list. And I think then it comes down to your risk preference. Like, if you really want to take punts, then going Sessegnon and Trent instead of like a Newcastle defender is perfectly viable, right? You'll have to decide that for your own team. For midfielders, Salah's pretty straightforward at the top. I've then gone Palmer. I know people will hate that. I think Palmer will end up in a lot of drafts this week, despite the kind of opposition to that pick. It's just because we know what he can do. His underlying numbers for the season are still very, very good. He's almost clocked 200 points for the second season running. Because he's in this really bad run of form, people are writing him off. But I think Everton at home is not a bad fixture for him, and that's why I've got him second. I've then gone for Diaz because although I think he'll be picked up by a lot of free hitters, he won't be picked up by a lot of non-free hitters. And when you look at the odds on Rob T FPL's projections for this week, like Liverpool are projected to score more goals against Spurs than Newcastle are against Ipswich. So that's why I've got Diaz so high. I then put Murphy in fourth place because ultimately he's the attacker outside of Isak that I'm most confident will start. But for my own team, I've got almost no interest in him at all. But I think for a ranking, I'd probably have to put him a bit higher. Then Kluivert because he's at home to Man United on penalties. Then in Burma because he's away to Forest. I think that's a slightly trickier fixture. Then Bruno Fernandes, mostly because he's a penalty taker. Although I think he will start, but I probably wouldn't pick him against Bournemouth. But a mostly nailed... Yeah, I don't think Fernandes gets benched again, even though there's a European match coming up. So I think he'll play. Barnes or Gordon should absolutely be ahead of Fernandes in Burma or Kluivert if you're sure on who will start. But because I'm not sure, I had to put him a bit lower. If I'm guessing right now, I think Gordon's going to come back in. I've got a slight inkling that will happen and a slight temptation to go for it. But because there's risk there, they've got to be lower down. Then Mitoma ahead of Bowen purely because he's at home. He's back fit again now and available. Then Manetzi, if you really want to take a punt on another Wolves attacker that's not Cunha or Strand Larsen against Leicester at home. Underlying numbers are quite good for this year for Manetzi at Wolves, but it's a very small sample size. So it's hard to know exactly what you're getting, but obviously the fixture is good. And then for forwards, Isak at the top, then Cunha, pretty straightforward. I've gone for Jimenez because he's playing against Southampton and Miniz is out. Then Chris Wood, because of how good he's been this season. But honestly, for my own team, I've got Welbeck ahead of Wood because of the ownership. I don't think Welbeck will be in many teams. I think Chris Wood will be. And so that's why I prefer Welbeck. Also, I think Isak, Cunha, Jimenez and Chris Wood and Welbeck will all be on penalties. That's why I've got them all ahead of Strand Larsen. If you don't want to go for Cunha or you want to double up on Wolves against Leicester and you don't want to go for like a Manetzi, Strand Larsen and Cunha can absolutely work. But on an individual level, if you're asking me, do I think Strand Larsen is better than Welbeck? No. Do I think Strand Larsen is better than Chris Wood? Probably not. Do I think Strand Larsen is better than Jimenez this week? No. That's why he's below the rest. Then Evan Nielsen, then Jackson, then Visser. Visser is just a non-penalty and a Forest away thing. He's a good pick for the rest of the season. That's why he's on the wildcard draft. But for 34, I probably wouldn't go there. If you want to have these players in a different order, you want to take a punt here, there, go for it. It's free hit. It's your last chance to do something like that. Don't listen to me. I'm an idiot. So let's answer a couple of your questions. How many risks would you take on free hit? Trent, Barnes, Sessegnon, Bournemouth picks, and even Cunha are all high upside options, though risky for minutes. Now, I kind of disagree on Cunha. I don't think he's all that risky for minutes this week. Possibly until the end of the season, yes. But for 34, I think he's okay. I also don't think he's that much of a high upside pick either. Like, he could do really well, but when you go and look at everyone's free hit drafts, Cunha's in nearly every single one. So if you really want to go different, you could back against Cunha. And Bournemouth picks I don't think are that risky for minutes. Evan Nielsen, Kluivert, Semenyo will probably get decent minutes and all start as they usually do. The other players, fair enough. The honest answer is I can't give you a definitive number of this is the amount of risk that you should take because everyone's goals are different. Some people are chasing overall rank. Some people have got a small gap. Some people have got a huge one. Some people are only interested in mini leagues. If you know the person above you is not going to pick Cunha, that's a massive differential over your mini league, but it isn't a massive differential in terms of overall rank. So all these things need to be considered. Also, some people just don't cope well when things go wrong. So lots of people will say to me, I'm just going to take a risk. If it goes wrong, so be it. Some people genuinely just don't care. If it goes wrong, they'll just think, well, that doesn't matter. I'll just think about next week. Some people take it really badly and it affects them for days. If you're that kind of person, think about how many risks you genuinely want to take. The short answer, the shorter answer is basically the more points and rank you're trying to make up, the more risks you probably have to take. Like, this is something that's playing on my mind quite a lot this week, as you'll see when I talk through my team later on. I'm 125k. I would like to get to top 50k. That's quite a big jump with only 5 game weeks left. I've probably got to take some real punts if I really want to try and make that up. But it could go horribly wrong. And am I prepared for my ranking to take a massive hit? Not really. So I don't know if I will take those risks. You could also take risks with captaincy. So instead of going for Salah, go for Isak. Or if you're going to captain Salah, really go against Isak and just don't own him at all. But that's a massive risk. So how many points do you need to make up? If you're trying to make up like 10 or 15 points, you probably don't need to take that many risks. If you're trying to make up like 40 to 50 plus, you want to be taking some big risks as long as you can deal with the fact that it could go horribly wrong. So the bigger the gap, the more risks you need to go for. I also think there's some probably more calculated risks as well. Like, for example, if we're thinking about free hits specifically and not non-free hitters, the likes of Welbeck, Evanilson, Visser will be quite low owned. Like, the top 2 forwards are easily going to be Isak and Cunha. And I think in third place, it'll probably be mostly Chris Wood and Raul Jimenez. Same in midfield, right? Lots of people are going to go Salah, Palmer, probably Diaz. That 4th or 5th spot is up for debate, right? You could just think, screw it, I'm not going to go for like an Mbeumo, I'm just going to go for a Mitoma. I'm going to take a risk on a Menetzi. So you know they're probably going to start, but they're massively differential in terms of their ownership. So there's different type of risks, right? You can take a captaincy risk, you can take a minutes risk, or you can just take an ownership risk. Same in defence, right? I've got double Newcastle. You might think, let's just hope they Ipswich score and back double or triple Wolves defence or double or triple Fulham defence instead. There's loads of different ways you can do it. How many risks you should take is really up to you. Think about your goals, how much you have to make up. The bigger the gap, the more risks you're going to have to go for one way or another. I know that probably hasn't helped, but I can't just say 2 risks is where it's at, because that might not be the case for everyone. So slightly different question about free hit. Would you free hit now if you have 10 players, or save it for game weeks 36, 37 and target the double and blank game weeks? I think if I had 9, 10 or 11 decent players this week, I'd consider not free hitting and just hoping that we have more doubles later on. It's worth saying once again, there is no guarantee we will have any more doubles or any more blanks after game week 34, but it's possible. And if it does happen, it will be games postponed in 37 because of the FA Cup final, and they will almost certainly be moved to game week 36. So there is potentially some advantage there. Your worst case scenario is you go into 34 with 9, 10 players, you're beaten by all the free hitters, and then there's no more doubles or blanks later on. And then you've just got to play it in whichever week works best for your team. Maybe even in game week 38 as a final day punt, whatever you want to do. That's worst case scenario. But best case is you're only just behind this week. You've got a massive advantage for 36, 37. Now, I can't even guarantee that if the doubles happen, it'll be that great because there could be rotation and stuff like that. But you'll be in a much better position than those of us that don't free hit. So you are taking a bit of a leap of faith that those doubles and blanks will happen. I think it's more likely to happen if Man City and Villa win in the FA Cup, and they will both be the favourites for their respective games. So I think in that case, I probably would save it. But obviously there is a worst case scenario where it massively backfires and you don't have the doubles and blanks later on, but I'd be tempted to hold it if you can. So I'm going to end by talking about my own team. I'm on free hit this week. I'll be honest, this will probably turn into a bit of a ramble, and by the end of it, I'll have probably discussed pretty much every single player there is to consider this week, but that's kind of where my head's at. Nothing is locked in until the deadline tomorrow, and there's so many options to consider. Now, I think the most likely outcome is that I go for a fairly safe team in terms of starts and minutes. So something like you see on screen right now, Nick Pope and Trippier double up on Newcastle defence. I'm pretty sure I'm going to back against Murphy because of his ownership, and I'll back against Barnes and Gordon because I'm not quite sure who will start. So that means I just default to double Newcastle defence instead. I know a lot of people will point out that Ipswich are a better team than Leicester and Southampton, but I don't think it's by as big a margin as people make out. And Newcastle are strong at home, so I could see them winning like 3 or 4-0, and not conceding. 8-Nuri has pretty much been a lock the whole week. I want to back Wolves' defence against that Leicester team that are really struggling to score at the moment. He's the most nailed attacking defender, right? There's other nailed defenders as well, but he's the most attacking. And then I've got Robinson in the 11 because he's going to start. Sessegnon might not, and it's the same for Trent. So again, this is kind of the safe minutes play draft. In midfield, I've gone for Kluivert, Luis Diaz, Salah and Palmer. I think Salah and Palmer are pretty much locked in for me. Luis Diaz has been in every draft I've done recently as well. I think he will start. There is some doubts there. It could be Gakpo left wing, Jota up front. It could be Gakpo left wing, Darwin Nunez up front. But I think because there's not been any European matches and stuff like that to rotate for, Luis Diaz has had a week off. I think he's part of the best first 11 for Liverpool at the moment. I think he plays. And even if Gakpo does play, Diaz could be up front. So I think he's going to be in for me. I think his ownership on free hits will be quite high, but overall not that bad. And I just think there's going to be a lot of goals for that Liverpool team. And then my fourth midfielder is Kluivert. I'm actually not that excited about him as a pick this week, but I think he's solid enough, right? And I also think his ownership will be less than like an Mbeumo. So Mbeumo was already higher owned than him. And obviously he absolutely smashed it last week. And if you look at the transfers in so far, like Mbeumo's had 328,000. Kluivert's had 68k. Now a lot of those will be free hitters, but overall his ownership is going to be lower. And I think Man United at home is better than Forest away. Now Mbeumo will definitely play 90. I can't say the same about Kluivert, but they're both on penalties. Kluivert's got the easier fixture. His ownership will be lower. That's why I'm going for him. And ownership is playing on my mind quite a lot. And I'm not sure how much it should be. Because in some ways, I've said this many times before, points are all that matters. It doesn't matter how you get them. You need the most amount of points possible. And a lot of people have kind of thrown that back to me this week in the comments. They've said, "What you always say it's just about points. Why do you keep going on about ownership?" But I think there's a lot of close calls this week. And if it's close enough, I want to go for the player that's lower owned. So even if I think Mbeumo is slightly better than Kluivert, it's not enough where I think I have to have him. I could just go for Kluivert instead, the lower owned player. Whereas, for example, up front, Isak is miles better than Chris Wood this week, or miles better than Visser. There's no point fighting the ownership, in my opinion. So that's why he'll definitely be in. I don't see it the same for midfielders. And I'm 125k. I'd love to hit top 50k. To do that, I need to think about ownership at least a little bit. Maybe I need to think about it more than this team suggests on screen. But again, this is the safe play. Then up front, it's Cunha, Isak, Raul Jimenez. You're going to see that front line absolutely everywhere. Bench is Sanchez, Sessegnon, Trent, Sessegnon. I've not really thought about the bench too much. So that's kind of the safe play. If I really wanted to kind of push it, these are the changes that I would make. I'd drop Cunha and go for Welbeck. I really think Cunha starts, by the way. But Welbeck's a good... Like, West Ham are a poor team. He's at home. He's going to play because João Pedro's out. He's on penalties as well. At least I think he will be. So he's kind of a big change. Instead of Kluivert in the 11, I'd go for Anthony Gordon and just hope that he starts over Barnes, which there's no way I can guarantee that. We're not going to get any information. The in the know Newcastle accounts are just not helpful most of the time. So we're not going to have information. But they are playing 3 p.m. Saturday, so you never know. Also, it's on TV in Ireland, so if I get that right and Gordon plays, that would be quite fun to watch. Then I'd have to drop a goalkeeper. Then I'd have to drop one of Pope or Trippier. So I'd probably drop Pope and go for Leno instead of the Wolves goalkeeper. And then another thing that I've slightly considered is like a double up on Wolves defence. Because although they're a weaker defence than Fulham, I would say, and Newcastle and Liverpool, they've got the fixture in Leicester at home. And obviously they play with wing-backs, so Aït-Nouri and Semedo kind of fits in quite nicely. So I could go something like, let me just make those transfers. Like, money doesn't matter, so I just make the transfers as much as I need to. Yeah, something like this. So double Wolves defence, Aït-Nouri, Semedo, Trippier still in there. Then Leno. I mean, I could even take it one step further and just only go, let me just put Gordon in the 11, only go for 2 Newcastle, Isak and Gordon, just not go for their defence at all. And maybe go like double Fulham, double Wolves. So Leno and Sessegnon, Semedo and Aït-Nouri, then Salah, Diaz, Gordon, Palmer, Raul Jimenez, Isak, Welbeck up front. And I know what people are you're just doing it to be different, but yes, that is why I'm doing it. Because I feel like I need to push it a little bit. And it could go horribly wrong. And because I create content, that is on my mind. Like if I didn't create videos, okay, I might get a bit of stick from people, you know, my mates in my mini league and stuff like that. That'll all be forgotten by next season. Whereas if I go really risky and it doesn't pay off, I've got to put up with all the questions next season about why my rank wasn't good this season. And I wish I kind of mentioned this earlier when I was talking about the risk. People have different views on what a good finish will be. Like if you've never finished in the top 200k and you're 180k right now, you might just want to play it safe. You just want to stick where you are. That's absolutely fine. But for me, I've only ever finished outside the top 100k twice in like 15 seasons. So I really don't want that to happen. But I also really want to push 50k. So something like this could be quite nice. Just go all in on 2 defenses and just not go for Cunha and go for Welbeck up front. It'd be just my luck that Raul Jimenez, like Welbeck doesn't start. Like he's picked up a mystery injury that Hertzler hasn't told us about. And Raul Jimenez only plays 70 minutes despite Muniz not being there. And Barnes starts it. Like Barnes starting instead of Gordon's fair enough, right? There's not much I can do about that. That is a risk. So something like that. Or there's like a mix of the two. So I keep Kluivert instead of Gordon. I go back to Cunha up front instead of Welbeck. Possibly instead of Raul Jimenez, by the way. That is also an option as well. And then in defence, rather than go for like Semedo, I just play Sessegnon or Trent and just leave it at that. Like that could work as well. But I don't know. This is the problem. I'm just in so many like minds about how I could play this. I mean, I could play Cunha in double walls defence potentially. Let me just put another player in here a sec. Let me just put Van Dijk in. Like Van Dijk I think is fine by the way, but if I go Liverpool, I really want Trent. So like I've got Cunha who's the obvious pick up front instead of Welbeck. I've got Kluivert who's a fairly solid pick this week, but then in defence, I've still got double Wolves, double Fulham. But then that's only one Newcastle. That just doesn't make sense, does it? It just does not make sense in any way. Like against Ipswich. And they're such a strong team. So I mean I could do this actually. Let me just get rid of Gordon. I did tell you this is going to turn into a ramble. Let me put Sessegnon back in for the bench. And I could go for Pope. Oh, not people. Pope. So still have double Newcastle. And just have like double Wolves maybe. So maybe that's the slight differential. But it's only a minor one. This is. I said this already in this video probably multiple times. This is what I'm struggling with is how much is free hit enough of a differential in the first place? Because there's going to be a lot of people using their free hit this week. But there's going to be a lot of people that aren't. And those people that aren't will not have as good a team. There'll be a lot of people that are set up really nicely, but that won't be the majority. So I'm already going to be up a little bit because I'm free hitting. But then people are going to have wildcards, triple captains, stuff still to play this season. And I don't. So I'm going to lose points later on. I'm really not sure where I'm going to land. I'm fairly sure I'm going to own Isak, Palmer, Diaz and Salah. Those 4 are locked. I'm fairly sure I will also own Raul Jimenez, Cunha and Kluivert, but there's part of me that even if I go back to that safer first draft for the minutes, right, where I didn't have Semedo, I think I had like Robinson instead. There's part of me that just thinks just for the hell of it, just go for whoever instead of Kluivert. Just go for like a Matoma or a Menetzi that nobody is going to own this week. Like for 1 week only, just like the rest of the draft is super safe instead of in terms of starts and minutes, and just go for that one slight differential in Matoma. Is it enough? The problem with a free hit week like this, where there's so many good options, is you can go through so many different players, and you know you're going to get the wrong draft, and that's why it'll hurt so much. But that's really the only players I'm considering. Just to go through the rest of the teams, Bowen, I'm going to back against because it's Brighton away. Of course he could do well, but I'm going to take that on this week. Similar situation with Visser and Imbermo. Chris Wood, maybe. By the way, the Forest-Brentford game is on Thursday. So there's quite a bit of a gap. So if you don't go for any Forest or Brentford players, you're all out. Whereas other people will be waiting until Thursday for a couple more players. So that's maybe gives more reason to go like a Wood or Imbermo, but I'm not really paying attention to that. That's about it. Like a Wobie versus Southampton, I just don't really have a huge amount of interest in that. I don't think he's that attacking. I think I've mentioned like pretty much everyone else. Yeah, there you go. That probably hasn't helped. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you join my Sleeper League. There's links in the description below. And I'll be back for the deadline stream tomorrow starting at 9 AM. So I will catch you then.